On today's episode of the podcast, I am discussing the best way to manage situations when we are forced to be around people who do not bring out the best in us. This could be work colleagues, a boss, family, or friends of friends. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to the Live Mindfully podcast. I am your host, Laurie Moore, and a big shout out to all the parents who are in their second week of the school holidays. A massive shout out to the wonderful grandparents, friends and family helping mums and dads who haven't been able to take any time off. There are only a few days left, so please find some time to enjoy your little people where you can. Today's episode, I know I am not alone when I say I want to be around people who bring out the best in me. In fact, there are times where I go to great lengths to avoid being around people who will bring out the worst in me, and for good reason. This is a really healthy thing to do. Unfortunately, and in my opinion, far too often, we are put into situations where this is just not possible. In fact, there are going to be occasions where not only are you stuck being around someone who brings out the worst in you, there are going to be times when you are around people who are actively trying to bring out the worst in you. But there's a big difference in being around someone who is triggering you and being around someone who is purposefully triggering you. And more often than not, and as hard as this is to believe, most people who do trigger you, they're not even aware that they are doing this. And they may even start to avoid you because they don't really understand why you seem to always be short, angry, hot-tempered, and irritated. They may even assume that this is just part of your personality that has nothing to do with them. And you might be thinking, how? How could they not know? But honestly, they just don't occupy enough awareness to know. They don't realize their effect on the people around them. But then, of course, we have the very small group of people, and we all know someone who makes it their sole intention to ruin gatherings or work events with their inappropriate comments and disrespectful remarks because they are trying to trigger people around them. They are trying to push buttons. In some cases, they are trying to break people. And if we're paying attention, it's really easy to spot these people. Sometimes they make it incredibly easy by actually saying things like, "Ooh, look, I'm starting to get under your skin now." Other times you can just, almost see the pleasure on their faces as they start to feel their influence over you. And with people like this, I like to play a little game. They don't know I'm doing this. I mean, they might now if they listen to this episode, but I play a little game of can I keep my calm and who will crack first? And honestly, I feel sorry for these people. What a sad existence that you actually want to get under somebody else's skin. I often think, is your life so boring that this is what you do for fun? And once I spot a person like this, for me, I use this as an opportunity. An opportunity every time I am across from this person. And let me just be very clear here. This will be much less frequently now that I know this is part of their personality. But occasions will arise where I have to be in their company, and so I play my game. I practice kindness. I practice having a thick skin. And most of all, I practice my indifference to their comments. You see, I understand that I am not their teacher. I am not here to educate them. They've already shown me that they are only interested in gaining a reaction from me. And let me tell you something. When they don't get this reaction, they become really frustrated and they double down and become louder and even more outlandish and disrespectful. And then inadvertently, I realize that I have started to get under their skin because they're not able to get the rise out of me that they want. And eventually, and this always happens, they lose interest because they see this as a game as well. But I've had a real life opportunity to practice remaining calm. I've been gifted a real life opportunity to be in an unpleasant but not necessarily harmful situation to practice no reaction. And let me tell you something, friends, silence is a great response. In fact, it's the best response. You get to witness the feelings and thoughts and emotions arising within you, but you get to practice not doing anything with them. How amazing is that? You get to observe through the lens of curiosity how this person, who means very little to you, how they are impacting your nervous system. It's a game. Play it. Because if you're keeping the right company, you won't get many opportunities like this. On the flip side of this, you could be dealing with people in your life who have no idea that their comments, behaviors, or actions are actually having a huge detrimental impact on you. And usually these people are in our friend circle or in our family. And this becomes a tougher situation. You might not want to or feel that you can't cut them out of your life. But you can always create distance, and that might look like missing a phone call on occasion or limiting phone calls with this person to 15 minutes. And I've done this. I'm actually cultivating a habit of talking for approximately 30 minutes per phone call, and this is only due to time constraints. But if I'm talking to someone and the conversation is going south or they are triggering me, for example, I have some people in my life who they don't jive, let's say, with Western medicine. And the thing is, I honestly don't care what you do with your body. It's yours. It's none of my business. But I also don't need to get into long, drawn-out discussions about how Western medicine fails us or it's all about big pharma. I don't like the energy that this brings up. And I am okay with politely steering the conversation away from these topics. And if that doesn't work, I will cut someone off and say one of two things. Either I will say, look, I'm not interested in having this discussion. Or if I know that won't be well received, I simply excuse myself from the conversation entirely by saying something like, look, I'm really sorry to cut you off. I actually have to run. In yoga, we operate under 5 yamas, and these yamas form the basis around moral discipline. The first yama is non-harm, or ahimsa, and the second is truth, or satya. Now, yoga says that non-harm must always be our primary goal, and if the truth is hurtful and unnecessary, then we must instead opt for non-harm. And I often think of life through the lens of these 2 yamas. Will the truth be harmful for the other person? And is it necessary? And so long as the truth I am telling, or the truth that I am not telling, doesn't have any long-term ill effects, I will always opt for non-harm. But we also must extend these moral disciplines to ourselves. And if our harmony is being threatened in a way that is likely to harm us, or speaking the truth is likely to harm us, as is sometimes the case, we must protect ourselves. And I want to address this spiritual gaslighting that I see time and again. It's really starting to drive me a little bonkers, where people do this to themselves. They believe that harmful people are brought into their lives to teach them some kind of spiritual learning. You know, that there's a lesson here. And too often we keep ourselves in harm's way to learn this lesson or to gain some kind of spiritual ground. And if this is you and you really need the learning, let me lay it out plain and simple. The lesson you are being taught from whatever intelligence you believe in is, can you cut this stuff out of your life? That's it. That's the learning. We have to stop making excuses for keeping these people in our lives. The learning is, are you capable of setting a boundary? A promise to yourself to not partake in this harmful nonsense anymore. Do you love yourself enough to remove yourself from harm's way? That's the learning. No one expects you to remain in a harmful situation, in a triggering situation around someone who is bringing out the worst in you. So if you do have family or friends in your life who are triggering you and they're not aware of it, again, we practice. We practice non-reaction from within. We observe what is coming up. We become curious, because if we know they aren't doing this intentionally, then why are we so impacted? What is it about this interaction that is so triggering to us? Maybe their ignorance gets on our nerves. Perhaps it's their ego or their belief that they are always right. But something they are doing is grating up against us. And truly, it isn't about them. It's about us. And that's why we stay curious. What is it about their behavior that is so triggering to us? And perhaps we need to practice generosity and kindness in this moment because they don't mean to be this way. It's not necessarily their fault that they have no awareness around it. As someone who has a tremendous amount of awareness, it's easy for me to become frustrated by someone's lack of awareness. But it's really hard to cultivate awareness if you're not aware that you need to be more aware. You know? I mean, that's a real catch-22. How do you gain awareness if you don't know you don't have it? And I also want to say that these people are usually the best and easiest to address their behavior with. Often you can pull them aside at some later stage in the evening or another day entirely and just calmly tell them how you feel when they say certain things, that it impacts on you. And if it is about education on a subject matter, perhaps you can steer them toward a video or a podcast or an article that helps to open their eyes on an issue. You know, they may not want this, but at least you know how the other feels on this issue. But if someone is purposefully triggering you, cut them. Don't be scared to reduce contact with them. And if telling the truth will result in harm, as it once has for me, 2 years of anxiety and depression to be exact, opt for non-harm and don't tell them the real reason. And therefore, maybe not telling the truth They don't need to know the ins and outs of your business. And we have gotten ourselves into such a bad habit of over-explaining ourselves or responding straight away or always answering the call. Stop doing this. Eventually they will get the picture that you are busier than usual or that you just don't want to see them. And every now and again, I have someone who surprises me. They'll text me and say, "You seem unusually distant. Have I done something to upset you?" And while this is a very, very rare occurrence and absolutely should be if you are keeping the right company, they've very kindly and bravely created an opportunity here for me to express my grievance and strengthen the relationship. So I will say, yeah, I am upset. And if you are willing, I would love to have an open conversation about it with you. And in many cases, we have been able to rectify the issue and build an even stronger foundation. If someone is purposefully triggering you, it's time to reduce contact as best you can. Do it over a few weeks or months. There is no benefit to having this person in your life. And if you have noticed someone becoming more distant in your life, perhaps you need to check in and learn if your behavior is harmful or triggering to them. We all deserve to be surrounded by good people. Our intention should never be to bring out the worst in another. And if someone is bringing out the worst in you, then that's a huge red flag. You deserve to be surrounded by people who bring out the best in you. You really deserve that. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. This is Live Mindfully with Laurie Moore. I would be so grateful to you if you could share this episode with your family and friends and across your social media and hit that subscribe button. I'll be back next week. Until then, take good care of yourself.